Ladies and gentlemen, in the blazing heat of the Texas plains, where survival was a daily battle, Captain John Coffee Hayes, often called Jack Hayes, was more than just a Texas Ranger. He was a pioneer of frontier warfare and a man whose name would come to symbolize raw courage in the face of chaos. Born in Tennessee in 1817, Hayes moved to Texas in the early 1830s, a time when the region was a land of constant turmoil, lawlessness, and violence. It was here that he quickly rose through the ranks of the Texas Rangers, earning a reputation for his uncanny instincts, fearless leadership, and unmatched combat skills. Despite his youth, he was in his early 20s during many of his most legendary encounters. Hayes possessed the mind of a seasoned warrior. He wasn't just a fighter. He was a tactician who understood terrain, enemy psychology, and the power of innovation. Unlike many others who saw the frontier as untamable, Hayes believed it could be defended through sheer determination and the right tools. His name became synonymous with resistance and resilience. In a land where the Comanche ruled the plains and settlers often lived in fear, Jack Hayes stood tall. His bravery wasn't just the stuff of campfire stories. It was real, and it was tested time and time again. And among all the tales of his daring exploits, one stands out above the rest. The day he stood alone against 12 Comanche warriors. The year 1840 marked a turbulent era in the history of the American frontier, especially in the volatile lands of Texas. This was a time when the newly formed Republic of Texas was still struggling to maintain control over its vast and often lawless territory. Just 4 years earlier, Texas had declared its independence from Mexico, but peace was a distant dream. Alongside political uncertainty, settlers faced an even deadlier challenge: hostile encounters with powerful Native American tribes, particularly the Comanche. At this point in history, the Comanche were at the peak of their power. They were masters of the Great Plains, dominating vast regions from present-day Kansas to central Texas. Skilled on horseback and unmatched in guerrilla tactics, they posed a constant threat to settlers, soldiers, and travelers alike. Raids, ambushes, and surprise attacks were common, and the fear of sudden violence was a daily reality for anyone living beyond the protective walls of a fort or town. Texas Rangers, a loosely organized group of volunteer fighters, were often the only line of defense between these settlers and the brutal wilderness. It was into this chaotic, high-stakes environment that Captain John Coffee Hayes stepped, ready to prove himself in a world where survival demanded both bravery and brilliance. The land was untamed, alliances fragile, and danger waited behind every rock and tree. The battle for control of Texas was not just political. It was personal, and it was being fought with blood, grit, and fire. To understand the scale of Captain Jack Hayes' challenge, one must first grasp who he was up against. The Comanche warriors were not ordinary opponents. They were among the most formidable and feared fighters in North America. By 1840, the Comanche had earned a reputation as lords of the southern plains, dominating a vast territory known as the Comancheria, stretching across modern-day Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and beyond. Their society was built around warfare, horsemanship, and survival in a harsh, unforgiving land. These warriors were born into conflict. From a young age, Comanche boys were trained to ride, hunt, and fight with incredible skill and precision. By the time they reached adulthood, they were expert horsemen capable of shooting arrows with deadly accuracy at full gallop, often without saddle or reins. They used the terrain to their advantage, launching lightning-fast raids and ambushes, then vanishing into the wilderness before reinforcements could arrive. They could read the land like a map, track a man for miles, and strike with terrifying speed and brutality. Each of the 12 warriors Hayes faced would have been battle-hardened, fearless, and entirely confident in their ability to overwhelm a single opponent. In Comanche culture, bravery and ferocity were core virtues, and group strength was a deadly force on the battlefield. They didn't just fight, they hunted their enemies. To be ambushed by a dozen of them meant near certain death for anyone caught alone. The fact that Hayes was encircled by 12 such men, each likely armed with bows, lances, and perhaps even captured firearms, painted a grim picture of just how hopeless the situation seemed. The legendary encounter between Captain Jack Hayes and the 12 Comanche warriors took place near one of Texas's most iconic natural landmarks, Enchanted Rock. Rising nearly 425 feet above the surrounding terrain and spanning over 600 acres, this massive pink granite dome sits in the heart of Llano County, a region that, in the mid-1800s, was wild, remote, and thick with danger. To the Comanche and other native tribes, Enchanted Rock was more than just a geographic formation. It was sacred ground, a place surrounded by myth and mystery. They believed the rock was alive, whispering and groaning at night, and some thought it possessed spiritual powers. The surrounding area was dotted with caves, boulders, and rugged scrubland, perfect terrain for hiding, ambushing, and vanishing without a trace. This made it a deadly hotspot for skirmishes between native warriors and frontier scouts or rangers. For the Texas Rangers, including Captain Hayes, operating in this area was like navigating through a deadly maze. Trails were unclear, visibility was often limited, and the risk of ambush was constant. The granite dome and surrounding brushlands offered the Comanche an ideal staging ground for swift attacks, and many who wandered too close never made it back. Yet, this is exactly where Jack Hayes found himself while on a scouting mission, deep in enemy territory, outnumbered, and surrounded by warriors who knew every inch of the land better than he ever could. The setting was as unforgiving as the fight itself. The blistering Texas sun beat down on the rocky terrain, while the silence of the wilderness held an eerie tension, broken only by the distant cries of birds or the sudden snap of a twig. In such a place, every shadow could hide a threat, and every moment demanded complete awareness. To survive here alone was a feat in itself, but Hayes wasn't just surviving. He was preparing to make a stand. In an era when most men still relied on single-shot muskets, rifles, or pistols, Captain Jack Hayes held a secret weapon that would forever change the way battles were fought on the American frontier, the Colt Revolver. Invented by Samuel Colt in the 1830s, this groundbreaking firearm was the first commercially successful repeating handgun. Unlike traditional flintlock pistols that required time-consuming reloading after each shot, the Colt featured a revolving cylinder that allowed the shooter to fire 5 shots in rapid succession before needing to reload. To the average frontiersman or soldier, 5 shots may not sound like much, but in 1840, it was revolutionary. In the heat of battle, when seconds meant survival or death, the ability to fire multiple times without reloading gave the user a massive tactical advantage. And in the hands of a skilled marksman like Jack Hayes, it became a tool of deadly efficiency. Hayes was one of the first Texas Rangers to embrace this new technology, recognizing its potential to level the playing field against numerically superior and faster-moving enemies like the Comanche. The Colt gave him something that the Comanche warriors didn't expect: sustained firepower. In previous encounters, native fighters could easily time their attacks between an enemy's reloads, closing the gap and striking when their opponent was vulnerable. But with Hayes' revolver, those moments of vulnerability were reduced, if not eliminated altogether. The Colt wasn't without flaws. It was delicate, prone to misfiring if not handled properly, and reloading still took time. But in the right hands, and under the right conditions, it could turn one man into a small army. For Hayes, this weapon wasn't just an edge, it was the key to surviving a deadly ambush and holding his ground in the face of impossible odds. Captain Jack Hayes didn't walk into battle that day expecting to fight for his life. He was on a routine scouting mission, The kind Texas Rangers often undertook to monitor Comanche movements, assess potential threats, and gather intelligence in the vast and often perilous wilderness of central Texas. He was familiar with danger. Every step on the frontier carried the risk of ambush, but even for a seasoned ranger, nothing could prepare him for what was about to unfold. As he approached the rocky terrain near Enchanted Rock, Hayes suddenly realized he was not alone. From the shadows of the brush and behind the granite boulders, 12 Comanche warriors emerged, quickly surrounding him. They didn't charge immediately. Instead, they circled him like wolves, studying his movements, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Comanche were expert tacticians. This wasn't a random attack. It was a coordinated ambush, designed to isolate and eliminate their target without giving him a chance to escape. Hayes was completely alone. There were no fellow rangers nearby, no backup on the horizon, no place to retreat. Behind him was the hard, unforgiving stone of Enchanted Rock. In front of him, a dozen skilled warriors on horseback, armed and confident. They had the high ground, the numbers, and the advantage of surprise. In moments like this, most men would have tried to run or surrender, hoping for mercy or a slim chance at escape. But Jack Hayes wasn't most men. He didn't panic. He didn't flinch. He quickly scanned his surroundings, taking in every rock, every crevice, every natural formation that could serve as cover. He knew that standing in the open meant death. In the face of almost certain doom, his mind turned to strategy, how to survive, how to hold his ground, and how to use every last bullet in his revolver with deadly precision. The Comanche expected an easy kill, another settler or soldier who had wandered too far. What they didn't know was that they had cornered a man who was trained, armed, and mentally prepared for moments exactly like this, when the odds were hopeless, but the fight wasn't over. When Captain Jack Hayes realized he had been surrounded by 12 Comanche warriors, he didn't simply rely on bravery. He relied on strategy. Years of experience as a Texas Ranger had sharpened his instincts for survival. He knew that charging blindly or trying to flee would be suicide. So instead, Hayes did what few could do in such a dire situation. He kept his cool, quickly assessed his environment, and turned the natural features of the land into tools for survival. Using the rough granite terrain near Enchanted Rock, he found a position that offered both cover and visibility. Large boulders and crevices served as natural shields, giving him a chance to fire without exposing himself completely. He stayed low, moved with calculated precision, and made every movement count. This wasn't a chaotic shootout. It was a methodical game of survival, where timing and placement were just as important as firepower. Hayes also understood the psychology of the Comanche warrior. They were bold, fast, and aggressive, but they weren't used to opponents who could fire multiple shots without reloading. Most settlers or soldiers they faced carried single-shot muskets or pistols, which meant they were vulnerable immediately after firing. Hayes, however, wielded a Colt Patterson revolver, a rare and revolutionary weapon at the time that gave him 5 shots in rapid succession. This allowed him to deliver sustained bursts of fire at critical moments, keeping the enemy at bay and breaking the rhythm of their traditional hit-and-run tactics. As the warriors circled him, testing his defenses, Hayes waited for opportunities. He didn't waste bullets. He picked his targets carefully, taking advantage of any hesitation or exposed movement. When one warrior charged, Hayes dropped him with a well-placed shot. When another tried to flank him, he shifted positions swiftly, using the terrain to his advantage. The ambush that was meant to be quick and brutal turned into a grueling standoff, as the Lone Ranger refused to be an easy kill. What made Hayes' defense so remarkable wasn't just the weapon in his hand. It was the discipline in his decisions, the understanding of his environment, and his refusal to let fear dictate his actions. In that desperate moment, surrounded and outnumbered, he didn't just survive through luck. He outthought, outmaneuvered, and outfought some of the fiercest warriors the frontier had ever known. In the chaos of frontier warfare, timing was everything. For the Comanche warriors, one of their greatest advantages came from understanding their enemy's weaknesses, particularly the time it took to reload a weapon. Traditionally, after firing a musket or a flintlock pistol, a soldier would need precious seconds to pour powder, load a ball, tamp it down, and prime the pan. That small window was when the Comanche struck, fast and hard, closing the distance before the next shot could be fired. It was a strategy that had worked time and time again. But on that fateful day near Enchanted Rock, something was different. As Captain Jack Hayes fired shot after shot, dropping one Comanche warrior, then another, confusion began to spread among the attackers. Where was the pause? Where was the reload? Instead of crouching behind cover to fumble with powder and wadding, Hayes was remaining in position, calm, steady, and still shooting. His revolver, a Colt Patterson, had fundamentally altered the rules of the fight. The Comanche had never seen a man fire 5 shots so quickly, with such deadly accuracy, without having to reload between them. At first, they may have thought it was a trick. Perhaps he had more than one gun. Perhaps there was another shooter nearby. But as their comrades fell and Hayes showed no signs of running or panicking, it became clear this man had a weapon unlike anything they had ever faced. And in battle, uncertainty breeds hesitation. That hesitation was all Jack Hayes needed. Suddenly, the attackers who had once encircled him with confidence began to falter. Some broke from their positions to regroup. Others tried to find cover. The swift, fluid aggression that the Comanche were known for began to lose its rhythm, replaced by a growing sense of caution and confusion. Hayes, seizing the moment, didn't let up. He maintained pressure, shifting position when necessary, but never allowing the warriors time to fully reorganize. This moment, when fear shifted from the defender to the attackers, marked the true turning point of the battle. The Comanche realized they were not just fighting a man. They were facing a new kind of warfare, and in that terrifying instant, the power of innovation met the brutality of the frontier. For most people, facing off against 12 elite Comanche warriors would be an instant death sentence. Even with the advantage of a revolver, even with strategy and cover, the mental and physical demands of such an encounter were staggering. Yet what truly set Captain Jack Hayes apart was not just his skill or his weapon, it was his unbreakable endurance. In the blistering Texas heat, surrounded by danger, Hayes fought a battle that tested the absolute limits of human willpower. Physically, he had to endure the intense strain of constant movement, ducking, aiming, and shooting with precision, all while knowing that a single mistake could cost him his life. The rocky terrain near Enchanted Rock was no friend. It was jagged, uneven, and unforgiving. Every shift in position scraped skin, strained muscles, and demanded more energy than he could spare. Sweat stung his eyes, his hands likely trembled from adrenaline, and yet he remained composed, never wasting a movement, never wasting a shot. But the real war was happening inside his mind. The psychological toll of being hunted, of knowing you are utterly alone with no hope of rescue, can break even the strongest man. Panic lurks in such situations, whispering that it's hopeless, urging surrender or flight. Yet Hayes pushed those thoughts aside. His mental focus never wavered, and with each fallen enemy, he refused to give in to despair. He knew that every second of survival increased his chances, and every shot he fired was a statement. I am still fighting. I am not done. The fear, the pain, the noise, all of it had to be blocked out. Instead, Hayes channeled that pressure into clarity, into determination. His breathing was likely labored, his heart racing, but his mind stayed sharp. He calculated his shots. He monitored the enemy's movements. He adapted to changing threats in real time, drawing on every ounce of strength and discipline forged through years of dangerous service. And when his ammunition ran low, when the battle shifted again, he didn't falter. Because by then, he had already proven something few men could, that sheer endurance, both physical and mental, could be as powerful a weapon as any gun. As the sun hung high in the Texas sky, casting a scorching light over the rocky wilderness near Enchanted Rock, the battle that Captain Jack Hays had fought against the 12 Comanche warriors came to a stunning conclusion. In the face of overwhelming odds, and surrounded on all sides, Hays had not only survived, but had turned the tide of battle. The Comanche warriors, who were known for their swift, relentless, and fearsome fighting, had begun to retreat. This was no ordinary retreat. It was a defeat in the face of a man they had underestimated. The initial confusion among the Comanche had given way to a deeper realization. They were no longer the ones in control. The same warriors who had once hunted and killed settlers with terrifying efficiency were now being driven back by a single man, wielding a revolver and the kind of courage that was almost mythical in its intensity. As each of their comrades fell, as the sounds of gunfire and battle echoed across the Texas plains, the Comanche realized that this fight wasn't going to end with their usual victory. They were in unfamiliar territory, facing an enemy that didn't play by the rules they knew. For Captain Hays, the outcome of the battle wasn't just about survival. It was a statement to the Comanche and to anyone who would hear of his legendary encounter in the years to come. He had stood alone against overwhelming odds, using his wits, his weapon, and his willpower to keep the warriors at bay. As the battle reached its climax, the Comanche broke ranks. A few, realizing the futility of the fight, started pulling back. Others, realizing that their usual tactics wouldn't work on such a resolute opponent, also began to flee. The retreat wasn't just a physical withdrawal, it was a psychological defeat. The Comanche, a group of warriors who prided themselves on their unmatched skill in battle, had faced a man who had forced them to rethink their approach. They had learned the hard way that even a small group of warriors could be overwhelmed if the enemy was resourceful, determined, and unyielding. The retreat of the Comanche marked the end of one of the most remarkable solo confrontations in American frontier history, but it also marked a shift in the balance of power. For the Rangers and settlers of Texas, it was a moment of triumph, an instance where a lone man had turned the tables on a seemingly invincible foe. As the dust settled and the last of the Comanche warriors disappeared into the wilderness, Captain Hays stood victorious, not just over the men who had surrounded him, but over the very notion that the frontier was a place where only the strongest survived. His courage had redefined the rules of engagement, and his victory would echo in the annals of Texas history for generations to come. Captain Jack Hays' legendary stand against the 12 Comanche warriors at Enchanted Rock is more than just a story of survival. It is a testament to the strength of the human spirit, the resilience of a lone man standing firm against overwhelming odds. His courage and quick thinking in the face of certain death not only saved his life, but also cemented his place in history as one of the greatest heroes of the Texas Rangers. His victory was not just one of battle tactics or superior weaponry, but of sheer willpower and determination. Hays demonstrated that even in the darkest moments, when it seems that all hope is lost, the fight for survival is often won in the mind first. Through his actions, he not only repelled the Comanche warriors, but also sent a powerful message to both native tribes and settlers alike. The frontier was a place where bravery could alter the course of history. The story of Jack Hays' battle against impossible odds lives on, inspiring countless generations. It's a reminder that no matter how daunting the challenge, courage, even in the face of overwhelming adversity, can lead to extraordinary outcomes. And though his fight that day was against 12 warriors, his true battle was against fear itself, a battle he would go on to win not just on that rocky Texas soil, but in the hearts of all who have heard his story. Jack Hays will forever remain not only a symbol of the indomitable spirit of the Texas Rangers, but also a hero who showed the world that one man, against all odds, can change the course of history.